Morning. Shabbos was last night. Whose phone was it? Okay, geweldig. So we are on the top of Daf Kuf Nun Vav Amud Aleph. And we learned yesterday that there was a machlokes how old someone must be in order to sell the nechasim, either all karka or only the karka that he actually from his father. And the machlokes was whether the number is 18 or whether the number is 20. Of course, the person also has to have stay seiros to show that he's an adult. However, we also learned from a shaila that Rav Gidel Menashe said to Rava that if it's assessed that this child is smart and he's over 13, then his transaction, his mechira, will also be a good mechira. We learned that a child can say edus on metaltlin if he's younger than 18, but on karka, it could only say karka if he's over 18, and he's old enough, and he's able to sell his own karka. If he could sell and do his own transactions with karka, then he's now in his aid. And then the last thing we learned was a very interesting point, is although a young person under 18 or under 20 cannot sell karka, nevertheless he can gift karka. He can give karka away. And the Gemara explained the reasoning is that since a young person is bedazzled when you the Lashna Gemara is the makarkashi. If you're waving the money in front of him, or you're shaking the coins in front of him, he gets enticed, and he might sell the property for less than its full value. But a b'matana, where that's not occurring because he's giving it away as a gift, there we do say that he'll only give it away if he's receiving something of equal value in response. Probably they did him some favor. That's why this person wants to give the karka away for a gift. And the Gemara ends off with an interesting point, is that the Rabbanan are concerned that people should do favors for Yosayim. The Rabbanan want people to do favors for Yosayim. So therefore, they had to make that the matanis that these children give away are valid, because that will induce people to want to do them favors. It sounds a little bit sinister. We want people to do favors for them. And if they know they could never get a gift, there'll never be a sign of appreciation, we're afraid people won't do favors. Thank you so much. We're afraid that people won't do favors for these children, and therefore the Rabbanan wanted to make sure that their matanas would be valid. That's where we got up to yesterday, which is about 8 lines down from the top of Daf Kuf Nun Vav Amud Aleph. Amar Rab Nachman, Amar Rab Nachman, Amar Shmuel, Boitkin lekedushin, ulegerishin, ulechalitza, ulemiunin, the limkar benechse aviv, achi hey ben esrim. Until he's 20, you're a boidik. Zok the Rashbam, Afal Pi, Shu Ben Yud Gimel Shanim V'Yom Echad, even though he's already an adult from a mitzvah perspective, or V'Ya Isha Bas Yud Bei Shanim V'Yom Echad, or a woman is already an adult once she's 12 years old. Nevertheless, Lo Samchinan Ashanim Lach Zukinu Ki Gedolim Ubenei Seyar. We don't automatically, when they reach that age, consider them adults and assume that they have two simonim. In order to consider their kedushay and vadai af lahakel, in order to consider the kedushin and vadai even lahakel. In what way will kedushin be makel? Zok Shishma, very simple. Going levatel kedusha sheni. So what happens if someone made a kedushin, and we don't know if he had shtei seiros, and then after he made kedushin, somebody else made kedushin, shekidush acharov. Does the second person require a get? We know if someone's mekadesh and eshesh, he doesn't have to give a get. His kedushin is not tovis because she's a married woman. However, if the first kedushin was a suffix. Why? Because we don't know if the person who made the kedushin that Shnei Shire is there. We would have to be machmer if someone else was mekadesh this same isha. We would have to be machmer that the isha would need to get from the second one, because it's possible that the first kedushin was not a good kedushin. Only if we were boidik the first person and we determined that not only was he a bar mitzvah, but he also had two Cyrus, then we could be sure his kedushin is a kedushin, and only then, if someone else made a kedushin on the same moment as he did, the second person would not have to give a get. Ulegerishin, it's also negeh to hilchos gerishin. The Gemara is going to ask in a minute. I don't understand if he has to be an adult, and we have to be boidik and stay Cyrus for kedushin. So by the time he got divorced, he was pre-checked already, right? So the Gemara is going to ask, how is it negayah to gerishin? Ulechalitza. In order for someone to be able to do chalitza, we're going to see what that means. And for miyun, we know that a girl who's only married midirabanan to her husband, because she's a yosayma and her mother or her brothers married her off as a small girl, up until she becomes an adult. She could make miyun. Once she becomes an adult, she could no longer make miyun. We consider the kedushin a kedushin deraisa, and from there on she'll require a get. And the Gemara is going to explain exactly what those circumstances are. The limkar b'nichsei aviv. That's the discussion that we had in our sugya. A person is not old enough to sell karka from his father's Yerusha, from his father's estate, ad shehei ben esrin, until he is 20 years old. Even though he has Cyrus, Mishpam speak out, like we just learned, he still has to be 20. So now, Frank the Gemara the following: V'chibin de bodakna the kedushin. If we were boidik this person to make sure that he had stay Cyrus, to make sure to validate his kedushin, so then when it comes time to get a divorce, he's already pre-checked. Legerishin lomali. Why would he need to be boidik him again if he got divorced? We've already established by the time he got married that he was vaday an adult. Zakhamar, you're right. It's only nageya if someone was a cotton and he did yibum. So there his kedushin is considered a kedushin deraisa. Because of yibum, if he wants to give a get, we need to ensure that he has two sires. It's not we learned. If he's for sure a minor, but he's roy labia, he's 9 years old, but he's for sure a minor, whose kedushin wouldn't be kedushin, we wouldn't even check. But Shabal Yivimtai, if he made Yibam, then Kana Kedushin Dairaisa. Now that he's Mekudesh Dairaisa and he's never been checked, what if he decides that he wants to divorce her? They ain't nice and get Achi Yigadal. He can't Achi Yigdal. He cannot give a get until he becomes an adult. He could be kind of a woman through Yibam, even though he's a minor. And that woman, if he wants to divorce her, he has to wait until he is an adult. L'chatlitza. So the chalitza means that a woman fell to yibum to a 13-year-old. He cannot do chalitza. The chalitza won't be valid. So Zok to Gemara, what is the chiddush of the chalitza? Zok to Gemara, lafuki mit Rabbi Yosef. This is actually coming to tell us that we do not pass on like Rabbi Yosef. What does Rabbi Yosef say? Damer ish kasav beparsha. Rabbi Yossi says when someone does chalitza, the man doing the chalitza has to be an adult, but the woman does not have to be an adult. Aval isha ben gedola ben ketana. If you have a woman who's an almana, she was a ketana and she got married, and then her husband died without children, maybe he could do chalitza on her. Maybe the brother-in-law, the Yavim, could do chalitza on her, even though she's a minor. That's what Rabbi Yossi holds. Kamash alon the makshiran ish al ish. That we hold the same way the man has to be an adult to do chalitza, so too the woman also has to be an adult to do chalitza. So like Rabbi Yossi, this would be inconsistent with Rabbi Yossi, because Rabbi Yossi held that the woman would not have to be a gedola. Zokter Ashbam, I'm sorry?
The gershon or the chalitza is for the...
That even the woman has to be an adult, and we'd be boidik her.
It's not like the lady.
No, boidik the chalitza.
Chalitza is for the lady.
Even the lady. Lishum chalitza ish lo istrich the megerishin shaminala. If we know that for gerushin needs 2 sayers, so we should also need for chalitza as well. The reason why it speaks about chalitza is to tell you that even the she has to be available. And because Rabbi Yosy holds she does not. Okay, is that good?
Nachman Mishmul is talking about both.
The male and the female. Correct. Ula mi'unin, what does mi'unin mean? So mi'unin means, again, she was married off as a ketana, and now she wants to do mi'un. So if the moment that she has shtei sayers, even though she's 12, but if she has 2, even if she's 12, she could still do mi'un. But if she really is 12 and she has 2 sayers, then she could no longer do mi'un. Zog to Gemara, what's the chiddush of that? Lafukim and Rabbi Yehuda. This tells you that we don't pass like Rabbi Yehuda, because Rabbi Yehuda holds even if she is 12 and she has 2 sayers, she still considered a ketana and she could still do miyun, because Rabbi Yehuda holds the Amar Achiyar b'Shachar. It's not enough for it to have 2 sayers. That whole area has to look like it's completely covered with hair. Then she's old enough that she can no longer do miyun. Kamash Malon, the loik Rabbi Yehuda, Kamash Malon, that we don't pass like Rabbi Yehuda, rather 2 sayers will now make it that she's too old to do miyun. And Velimkar benichse aviv achi hey ben esrim. What's the chiddush of that in the brisa? Lafukim imando amar ben shmoina asrei. Lafuk, we had a machlokes. Others held at 18 already. A person is old enough to sell the karka from the estate. So this brisa is telling us that 18 years old is enough. So v'hilchasa, to sum up the entire sugya, v'hilchasa toichsman klifneisman. Anything under 18 or under 20 is considered too young, and they cannot sell karka. But the hilchas Gidel bar Menashe. Gidel bar Menashe is the one who sent the child to Rava. What if we determine that this child is not 20, but the child is very sharp and understands the value of property, and we know will be able to sell property without getting ripped off? Rava said their sale would be valid. And the hilchas Kamar Sutra, Mazutra taught us Al Namid Beis that Mazutra taught us Namid Beis that a cotton or someone who's under 18 or under 20 would be neman for edus on karka, for amatalton, I'm sorry, but not for edus on karka. The hilchas Kamemar, the Allah Kamemar, who said that a cotton, although he can't sell property, he can give property as a gift, as a matana. The hilchazak Rab Nachman Amar Shmuel b'chulu, and the law is like Rab Nachman Amar Shmuel that we had right over here on Amar Aleph. One was that Boitkin, Kedushin, Legerishin, Lechlitza, all of these things we paskin like Rab Nachman Amar Shmuel. Well, it wasn't a brayse, right? Rab Nachman Amar Shmuel was it all. Okay, so that sums up the sukkah. Zok the Heilige Mishnah weiter. Hamachalak nechotzav alpiv. Somebody is already a shchivmera, and he's distributing his nechasim. Rabbi Lazar says, Echad bari ve'echad mesukin. It does not matter if he's a shchivmera or if he's a healthy person. It requires a kinyan. Nechasim sheyesh lehen achrayis would be nicknamed b'kesev b'shtaru v'chasaka. If you want to give away your karka, you have to use a bona fide kinyan that would work on karka. And if you want to give away metaltlin, a nicknel v'mashicha. So the Shpam tells us clearly Rabbi Lazar does not hold of the takana of a shchivmera. So the Rishpam tells us to what extent he doesn't hold, because the Mishnah says beferish, according to Rabbi Lazar, even if this person is a shchivmera, his assets, if he wants to give them away, he has to make a proper kinyan, and it wouldn't work with the new magic of Mata Shchivmera. But let's see the Rishpam, because there are certain circumstances where Rabbi Lazar holds that there is some halacha that does apply to Mata Shchivmera. Rabbi Lazar Sfir Lei, Le'inyan Shchivmera, that Einom Kiksuvim Umesurim Klal. A Shchivmera is no different than a Bari. He doesn't have any special magical kinyan. He has to make the same kinyan as for anybody else. It's Tzarech Kinyan Kishar Matnas Bari. That explains the Shita of Rabbi Lazar in the Mishnah. Correct? The Rashbam. The Alpha the miss, even if he ended up dying, so he gave a matana, he didn't make a kinyan, and he ended up dying, still like kana makabel matana, but like kinyan. the makabel will not be kaina unless he had made a kinyan while he was alive, because there's no such thing as a special kinyan of matna shchivra, the devar of ksuvim v'chamsurim. Afilu mitzava machmas misa nami. Now, if you remember, we learned a matna shchivra is someone who's very not well and he gifts away all of his nechasim. But we learned that only works if it was all of nechasim, if he wasn't shayr latzmai kosher. But if it was someone's mitzava machmas misa, means someone said someone's dying and he says, I'm giving this away to Reuven because I'm dying, we learned that works as a matna shchivra even if he didn't give everything away, right? So mitzvah machmas misa is like a matna shchivra on steroids, right? So Zokt Rishbam, Rabbi Lozer doesn't hold to that either. Afilu mitzvah machmas misa nami le Rabbi Lozer boy kin. Sharei Ma'isa Shal Iman Shal Bnei Roichel, the story of the Iman Shal Bnei Roichel, where the Gemara is going to try to prove that Amat Shivra does work. We already said a little while back, a couple of days ago, that was a case of Mitzvah Machmas Misa, and Rabbi Lozer in our studio is going to say that you don't have a raya from there that Amat Shivra works. So clearly, what it means is not even a Mitzvah Machmas Misa. V'yafilu hachi Paul Rabbi Lozer v'Amru l'Chachamim. Meaning you don't have a raya from there that the matna shchivmar works. Okay, we'll see that exact case in a moment. Even if he is a shchivmara, even if he didn't leave over anything for himself, which would work in the case of a standard matna shchivmara, right? Even if he was a mitzvah machmas misa, loy mikni ba'mira klal, Rabbi Lozer says that doesn't work. Here's where the Rishbam says a chiddush. The nir be'enai, the chivon the loy maflik Rabbi Lozer ben shchivmara lebori le'inyan heichad amis. If he died, Rabbi Lozer does not make a distinction between a shchivmara and a bori, and therefore a kinyan is required. And even if the person ends up dying, we do not honor his wishes because he does not hold of divei shchivmara. Hu adin heichad amad einoi chayzer. According to Rabbi Lozer, you would have had to make a kinyan. If he made a kinyan on all of his nechasim, but he ended up not dying, again, Rabbi Lozer holds that he won't get his nechasim back. We learned that if he gave everything away with a kinyan and then he survived, he gets it back. According to Rabbi Lozer, there's no such halacha. There's no all these halachas of special halachas of a shchivra don't apply, and therefore, if he gave everything away with a proper kinyan and he didn't die, the matana remains in place. Okay, so that is the shita of Rabbi Lozer. Let's turn on to Amar Beis and see what the Mishnah says about the Chachamim. Amrullah, the Chachamim told him, "How could you say that? I'm going to prove to you, in fact, that there is this concept of divrei shchivra." And the Rishbam says even more by mitzvah machmas misa because Ma'isa be'iman shel b'nei Roichel, the mother of the sons of Roichel, she was very ill. The Amran, she said, Tenu kavinasi leviti, give my kavina, give my shmata to my daughter. The Shaylim, what exactly it is? V'hi b'shneim aser mana, and it was worth 12 mana. So that there was no kinyan done. Umesin, she died. Vikimu es devarel. Chazal, the Rabbanim, the Poskim were Makayim, the words that she said, meaning clearly there was no kinyan made. It was merely because that's what she said she wanted. So you clearly see there's a concept of a matna shchivmara. The Rishbam tells us that the Gemara earlier said that clearly there were more assets. She just picked this particular item that she wants to give to her daughter, but it was a mitzvah machmas misa, and therefore it would work without a kinyan. So you see that Rabbi Lozer is not correct. Amar lahen Rabbi Eliezer, Amar lahen b'nei Roichel tikvra mima. It wasn't really a good kinyan. It wasn't a good kinyan at all. And there's no such thing as matna shchivmara. It turns out that these children, these boys, were very bad people. And since they were very bad people, to counsel them, to punish them, the Rabbanan said that yes, we are going to be mekayim the words of the mother and give that expensive clothing item to the daughter because we want to sanction the sons they shouldn't get. So this isn't halacha here. Min halacha, they get everything because the mother can't give anything away unless she made a proper kinyan. There was a special sanction that they wanted to sanction the sons because were not good people. They did things wrong, and the Gemara is going to tell us exactly what it was that they did wrong. Hani we learned in the Brisa. Amalen Rabbi Eliezer l'chachamim. Rabbi Eliezer told the Chachamim, I believe that the Tzionim changes it to Rabbi Elazar. Yeah, so Amalen Rabbi Elazar. There's a big shaila in Tosfos if this was Rabbi Eliezer or if it was Rabbi Elazar. We'll just learn it with the pashas. Amalen Rabbi Elazar l'chachamim. Ma'isa b'Meroini echad. There was a story with a Meroini. I think the Rashbam says who a Meroini is. Meroini, no, it doesn't say. It just says a Bari. Does he say? Meroini, Al Shem Ekoima. He came from, it's like similar to someone who comes from Michigan, he's a Michiganer. Someone who's a Mora comes from Meroini. It's the same idea. So this fellow was a Meroini, or could be he's down in a good, and remember, it could be Amoid Meraini, everyone was a Meraini. Remember? So it could be he was a Meraini. So what happened was, there was this Meroini, Shahaya Birushalayim. He was in Yerushalayim. The Hayaloi Metaltlin Harbi. He had a ton of assets, but Metaltlin. Ubikesh Litnem B'matana. He wanted to distribute them, as Rashbam says. So Yishchivmara, L'div Rabbi Elazar. He was a Shchivmara. Umekabel Matana Lahavagabe. Kidim Mefarish B'Kedushin. The people who he wanted to gift his things to were not standing right beside him, which would have afforded him the opportunity to make a kinyan. Uvikesh Litnem B'matana. And he was looking for a way that he can distribute them. Amrulai, the Rabbanim around him told him, Ein lahem takana. There's no way you could possibly gift these to the people that you want to give them to unless you use a kinyan agav. Ad sheyikna agav karka. And as Rashbam says, Ein lahem takana liskosh behen amekabel matana lufumai deloisom chedaiton ad sheyikna. Hachi mefarish b'kam tekadushin vas mefarish shabbos. The Gemara explains it over there, but there's no way that you will be able to get it to them. So what did he do? Unless you use a kinyan. So what did he do? He must have been relatively wealthy. Halach v'lokach beisa echot tzomich Yerushalayim. He went and bought a property somewhere near Yerushalayim. It was not a high quality property, as the Rashbam says. You couldn't have planted; it was all rocky, so he got a very good deal because really all he needed it for was kinyan. So he didn't care if it was a very low grade property. V'amar, and he said, Tzvaynoi, the northern portion of the field, Leploini. I want to be maknet to Ruvain, and Agav, the karka that I'm being maknet to him, the imoi meya tzoin umeya chavayos. And through kinyan Agav, I want him to be kinda a whole bunch of metalton, a lot of metalton. V'amar Tzvaynoi Leploini, the imoi meya tzoin umeya chavayos, udroi meya Leploini, and then Umeis, and then this Meroini died. And the Chachamim said that his kinyanim will work. So the Rabbanon told him. So who says this? So Rabbi Elazar said, so you see, he couldn't make a matna shchivra. You see, he had to make a proper kinyan. Doesn't that prove, in fact, that Divrei Shchivra is not Chechsuvim Chemasurin? Because otherwise, Rabbanim should have told him, never mind making this complicated kinyan, buying a piece of property, just say that you want to do. No. Amrulai, they told him back, what are you talking about? Mishum Raya. That's where you're bringing a Raya from. Merani Bari Hay. The Merani was a Bari. That's why he couldn't use the gift of Matna Shchivmera, because he was not a Shchivmera. So in fact, we agree he had to make a kinyan. Because it's only because he was not a Shchivmera that this was required. Of course, he ended up dying, but at the time that he gave these matanas, that he split up his assets, he was alive.
How are they kind of the karka?
I was thinking the same thing. So how does it solve anything? I don't know, but the Rashbam tells us there's a lot of shilas on the situation that the Gemara discusses in Kedushin. So I assume that's one of the reasons. Because even if he had someone be zoicha in the karka for them, he could have had someone be zoich in the metalflin for them. So I'm not sure exactly how that would have worked.
Mishnah said there was a difference between metalton and karka, right?
It does.
Yeah.
Where does
Chasam
it?
she'ein la mechrayis, it's only merushicha.
That's because that's how kinyanim work. Oh, so it could be. Oh, so yeah. So right. So it could be. That no one was around to make the mashiach. But the karka could do with kinyan kesef. Yeah. So karka, there's a way to be makneh to somebody, even though there's not someone right at the karka. You could make a kinyan kesef anywhere in the world, and you'll be kinyan a karka anywhere in the world. Sorry, this was right. This was the equivalent of an e-transfer. You didn't have to give him a check; you just could do an e-transfer. Now what?
Somebody do a kinyan for him.
Right. So, no, if he had someone be coined it for him, that someone could have been coined a metalfon do.
What if the metaltalin wasn't nearby?
He's doing it. He's doing the kinyan agav on his behalf as well.
Then I understand that. So why couldn't he do? I think he's asking. You have to. There has to be nearby. He could have done a kinyan chalipin. He could have done a kinyan chalipin. A guy could be standing by him. The animals could be anywhere in the world, and the guy gives him a handkerchief. He picks up the handkerchief, and through that kinyan chalipin, he would be makna the metaltalin. So it could be that even the people who are going to be kind of from weren't around. I'm not sure, because kinyan chalipin could have been done. Although the Mishnah says it would only work for Mashiach. For some reason, maybe a chalipin wouldn't work. I don't know why a chalipin wouldn't have worked. But in fact, if you have to have B'davka Mashiach, then I think you're saying good. Those are nearby. You have to have someone that's standing by the animal to make the Mashiach, which you can't do.
Archkel says to look in the Torah's Chaim.
Okay, thank you.
Says the Torah's Chaim, there's an explanation why a local person could not simply perform a kinyan that would acquire the metaltalin.
So I guess why couldn't he have done the Mashiach or something? Okay, so we have that shiloh. Okay, Gabalta, Gzak Gemara weiter. Amalahen, I'll try to look it up in Mitcham today, so at least I'll have the information for tomorrow. Saying over a pshat in yesterday's daf is like saying a Dvar Torah on last week's parsha. Gzak Gemara weiter. Amalahen, b'nei Roichel tikber mimon. So Frank Gemara, he cursed them, right? Tikber mimon, they should drop dead. My timer kalayit. Why would Rabbi Lozer speak about them with such disdain? What did they do wrong? And the Rishbam speaks out that you can't say that they were stam bad. Can't say that they were stam bad because that they're Rishoyim, they're in Gantam Rishoyim. You cannot say. Who speaks? I think the Torah speaks about it. Let's see. I think the Tosfos spoke about it. Yeah, you can't say they're a regular Rishoyim. There had to be something special going on over here. Let me just see in a second if the Rishbam says anything. I'm not sure, but they were in Stam Rishoyim. There was something special over here. My time Kalaipu. Amar B'Yehuda Amar Shmuel Mekaime Koitzim B'Kerem Noyim. They would allow koitzim, a thorny type of product that was animal feed. They allowed that to grow in a kerem. And there's actually machloikis if that's something that one must prevent. Rabbi Eliezer latemei, and Rabbi Eliezer is going like his own psak. It's non-learned. Hamakayim koitzim bekerem. Rabbi Eliezer Omer kiddush. They're becoming osher ba'noah because of klaya kerem. The chamar m'loy kiddush. Since they're only animal feed, we don't say that they will answer. So Rabbi Eliezer had tines on them because they're kaim kodim kerem, but they weren't stam rishoyim that everybody would curse them out because other people held it wouldn't be a problem. I hear. So someone I saw somewhere that you couldn't have said that they were stam rishoyim. There had to be something a little more subtle. So Zok to Gemara, v'chomer m'loy kiddush, ela davar shekamoyu makaimen. I'm sorry?
I was trying to think of something to be a bad person, but the not for it's a din.
Why did they sanction him?
Every time they sit down with the after someone dies, they one person examine how everyone behaves before they divvy up the Yerusha.
I hear, I hear.
Yeah, I tell you a story at one time with Rabbi Aaron Troy, I had an uncle whose son-in-law was a moment, he was alive, this guy, my uncle was alive, and his son-in-law, the time he didn't her with the sheriff, and Rabbi Aaron Troy, it came in London, right, they gave.
Oh, you're talking about
Not
not the Toronto
no,
area.
no, Zion there, they came to give the ruling. He looked the son on the face, said, every day when I get in the morning after saying Madani, thank God I didn't have a son-in-law like you. And then he went on to rule in the son-in-law favor.
Halacha is halacha. I hear.
I must have one better than the other.
So he said, "Pascal, we have Pascal halacha, but it doesn't mean that you're a mensch." I hear.
What did they do? It wasn't anything that they did not mention.
But no, what they did was they were violating, in Rabbi Loz's opinion, they were violating Hilchos Klayaker. Yeah. Only if it's something, it's a plant that people normally want to cultivate. So Dr. Bishlam Karchem Chazi. Karchem is a plant that people would want. There would be a problem like her. Kutzim Lamai Chazi. What why is this guy allowing kutzim to grow? There's no value in it at all. My time with Rabbi Eliezer, she came by Arabia, in Arabia, I'm not sure exactly where that is. Mekaimin kutzim besados ligmalein. They would keep these small plants, allow them to grow, because it's something that they would be able to feed to their camels. Rabbi Levi said, "Koinin kinyan mishchivmera va'afilu b'Shabbos." If a shchivmera wants to give something away, and he wants to give it away with a proper kinyan, you could do it even on Shabbos. But Rabbi Levi wasn't saying it because there's no other way for a shchivmera to transmit something, because he also Rabbi Eliezer, and that's why you'll let him make this kinyan on Shabbos, because you don't want to cause him grief. Rather, even if you hold that he could have given it away through a matna shchivmera, you still allow him to make a kinyan, because if that's what he wants, and you're not going to let him do it, Elishema titrav daitelov. So the same way they said that he can make a kinyan without making a kinyan, if on Shabbos Ibidafka wants to make a kinyan, which normally wouldn't be allowed, because he's a shchivmera, we allow him to do that. Let's see the Rashbam. Kinyan mishchivmera afilu b'Shabbos. Loish nahecha shetzarich kinyan. It doesn't make a difference if this matana required a kinyan going to shire, because he wasn't giving away all of his assets, so the matna shchivmera wouldn't have worked anyway. Loish na b'mechala kol mechasav. Even if he was giving away all his nechasim, where he could have used the matna shchivmera, but he has a mishagas that he bedafka wants a kinyan. The kivin the tali taima mishum shema titra of daitelov. Since we're just afraid that if he doesn't get his will, he's going to lose it, and it'll hurt him. He doesn't feel confident distributing his assets by Mira. He wants that kinyan. We allow him to make a kinyan, afilu b'Shabbos b'chol matanosav, even though normally we don't allow people to make kinyan on Shabbos. Bein sheshayir, tzarech kinyan, bein beloy shayir uvamira sagi. You still let him make a kinyan. V'yafagav the kinyan dami l'mekachom emkar, which is not allowed on Shabbos. Sharei koinin b'chelav shel koina, shemakna sudroi kidei liknos b'yamatana. Nevertheless, we allow it. But it's not because without a kinyan it wouldn't have worked. We're just doing it to appease this shchivmera. That's why we allow it. The hashta sam chodaite. He thinks that this is how it has to work, and this is what he wants to do. Okay, gewaltig. Zog more weiter. Rabbi Eliezer Omer b'Shabbos Devorav Kayam. So even though he holds that Divrei Shchivmera is lav k'chsum v'chemusurin, and therefore we force someone to make a kinyan if he wants to give something away, but Shabbos is different. On Shabbos we would say that Divrei Shchivmera k'chsum v'chemusurin, even Rabbi Eliezer, mipnei she'ein yochel lichtoi. And there we're afraid. Normally we don't say kidei havis daitei. We say Divrei Shchivmera k'chsum v'chemusurim, because let him make a kinyan. He has a way to distribute those assets. But on Shabbos, where he's not supposed to make a kinyan, there Rabbi Eliezer agrees that Chachamim did make the takana of Divrei Shchivmera. Zok the Rashbam, Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Im b'Shabbos chilek nechasov. If the story that we discussed in the last Mishnah happened to have occurred on Shabbos, os tiknu chachamim sheyehu devar of kayamin, even below kinyan uksiva. Why? Shalai titra of daitoi sheminadin and yachal liknois v'lichtoi b'Shabbos. Minadin, you can't do that. So therefore, they gave him another option. Avaloi b'choil, but in a weekday, like we learned in the last Mishnah, there's no special allowance for a shchimera. Rabbi Yeshua Omer fakert. Shabbos Amru, if even on Shabbos, where you cannot make kinyanim at all, they still said that a shchimras dvar of our mekuyim kal v'chaymer b'choil. Surely in choil where you could make a kinyan. In other words, it's much more mistaber that divich shchimra could work where anyway you could make a kinyan, because at least it's a day where it's in the parish of kinyanim. On Shabbos, which is not in the parish of kinyanim at all, there it would be less likely to make the allowance of a divrei shchimra. Okay, Gavalti. The Shabbos Amru Zakter Eshmam Shedvar Kayamin. Al Bagav the Lekal Meimar Migu de Yocha Liknois Velichtoi Kilo Avid Nami Kani. In Choil, you could say, since anyway he could make a kinyan, so they allowed the kinyan to happen through his dibur alone. Kavachayim b'Choil, because there's a svar of the Chala Roy Labila and Bila Makevis boy. Since he could have made a kinyan, you don't have to mamish make a kinyan. His dibur should be enough. But on Shabbos, it's not royal bila because you're not allowed to make a kinyan. Maybe there the matna shchivra wouldn't work. So therefore, Rabbi Yeshua holds for carrot that if on Shabbos they said dibur shchivra surely b'chad kayotziba. You have a similar logic in a completely different case. Zachin lekatan vein zachin legadol. Dibur Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer holds that you could be kind of something for a cotton, because a cotton can't be kind of something for himself, but you could be kind of it for him. But you cannot be kind of something for a gadol, because he could be kind of it for himself. So Rabbi Eliezer holds there's no din schia for a gadol because he doesn't need it. They made it the kind of that schia works for a cotton, because otherwise a cotton wouldn't be able to acquire anything. Rabbi Yeshua said punkt v'gerek lekatan amru. If even someone who's not in the parish of kinyanim, if even for him you could be zoicha for, surely you could be kind of something on behalf of a gadol. Okay, so this is not relevant, not directly related to this, but you see that same svara that Rabbi Yeshua holds. If it's royal lekach, then it's easier for them to make a takana to increase the kinyanim. Zok Gemara Masnisin Mani, who is the author of our Mishnah? Rabbi Yehuda. It must be Rabbi Yehuda. The Tanya we learned. Rav Meir, his understanding of the machlokes Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua is as follows. Rabbi Meir Omer, Rabbi Eliezer Omer b'chayil dvar kayamin mipnei sheyachal lichtoiv avoloi b'Shabbos. So clearly, Rabbi Meir doesn't have the Mishnah like we have it, because Rabbi Meir understands that Rabbi Eliezer said in chayil divrei shchivra kiksuvim v'chemesurim and not on Shabbos. Our Mishnah is punkt v'keret, and our Mishnah says in Rabbi Eliezer that b'chayil you need a kinyan, and on Shabbos the Shchivma works. But Rabbi Meir understood Rabbi Eliezer as having said exactly the opposite. Rabbi Yeshua's halacha, according to Rabbi Meir's understanding, is b'choil amru b'kal v'choymer l'Shabbos. If they said even b'choil divrei shchivma chesum v'msurim, where he could have made a kinyan, kal v'choymer l'Shabbos, where he can't make a kinyan. Kayotzeboy. Similarly, again, this is all the understanding of this sugya according to Rabbi Meir. Zachin legadol and zachin lekatan.
None of these are like what we learned.
Exactly the opposite. That's why our Mishnah is not going according to Rabbi Meir. It's going to be going according to Rabbi Yehuda.
We're going to Rabbi Shua.
No, Rabbi Shua, and
I'm going according to.
we only have Rabbi Meir. Because we don't know what Rabbi Yehuda says yet. Right now, we're just seeing how Rabbi Meir understood their machlokes, and it's definitely not consistent with what we have here.
Both of them, Rabbi Shua and Rabbi.
Correct. Rabbi Shua and Rabbi Eliezer, their shittas will not be consistent with how Rabbi Meir understood them. Rabbi Shua, so the logic is exactly the opposite. But Rabbi Yehuda says differently. Rabbi Eliezer Aimer, B'Shabbos, Dvar of Kayomin, Mipnei She'ein Yochal Lichtoiv, Avoloi B'Choil. That's exactly how our Mishnah reads. And Rabbi Shua Aimer, B'Shabbos Amru, Kal V'Chayim B'Choil, Kayoytze B'Zachin L'Katan, V'In Zachin L'Gadol, Divrei Rabbi Eliezer, Which is exactly how our sugya states it. Okay, we'll stop here. Hashem will be mamshech tomorrow. I still got to get down to the bottom of it. Why it's easier to be maknak of karka than to have made a kinyan matal directly. I figure